Did you see that from Dan, Toby? Can we not just do that?
We're live now, Chair.
Oh, we are. Okay, good. Right. Okay. Thank you, everybody, for your patience. Apologies for the late start. My name is Councillor Katie Dyke, and I'm chairing today's meeting. Before we start, I need to clarify that whilst this meeting is being webcast live to enable public access, it's not being held as a public meeting in accordance with the Local Government Act 1972, and as such, it's a remote consultative meeting of the Climate Emergency Advisory Committee. The status of today's meeting means that some of the usual formalities will not take place at the start of the meeting, and the committee will not be in a position to take any formal decisions. Any proposed actions that do require formal ratification will be referred to the next formal public meeting of the committee for approval. Please can I remind members and officers to turn their microphones to mute when they're not speaking, and to use the hand raising function to indicate that they would like to speak as we move through the agenda. So, turning to item 1, do you want to take us through items 1 and 2, Toby?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So item number 1 is apologies for absence. So apologies for absence have been received from Councillor Tudor and Councillor Newton. And item number 2 is interest. So can I ask members to declare any interest they may have? No, thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. And then item 3 is minutes of the last meeting, which are starting on page 5 of your pack. So I'm going to go through them as I always do and ask you to raise your hand if you have any matters that you'd like to correct and any matters arising. So page 5. Page 6. Page 7. Page 8, page 9, page 10, page 11, page 12, and 13. Okay, so we can agree those as a true record. And then we're moving straight on to item number 4. So item number 4 is our open forum. So we invite people to come and address the committee. And we have 2 people who are here today. So I'm going to go straight over to Ruth, who's going to go first. Ruth, nice to see you.
Hi, everybody.
Hi, you have 5 minutes if you'd like to just introduce yourself and tell us about your slot.
Can I present slides, or would you prefer me just to talk?
No, you can present slides. Well,
okay.
Fingers crossed you can present slides.
Yeah, I'll whiz through, hopefully. There we go. Okay, so I'm here today to talk about the Climate Ambassadors Programme. So this is a programme that is fully funded by the Department for Education, and it is off the back of their... I'm going to share a different screen. Sorry, I've got multiple screens. It gets awfully confusing. This is off the back of their climate action and sustainability strategy that they released a couple of years ago, in which it says that education settings are expected to have a sustainability lead and climate action plan by 2025. So I know some of you know about this. I've spoken to a few of you about it. And basically, I manage the Yorkshire and Humber hub for the programme. So we're working with lots of councils and schools and organisations in Yorkshire and Humberside. And what we do is we provide support to education settings for them to deliver and develop their climate action plans. And we do this through having volunteers who are called climate ambassadors. Now, our volunteers are like a variety of people. They can be parents, governors, they can also be council members, they can be academics, students, anyone who's 19 or over and can get a DBS can be a climate ambassador. And we provide lots of free training, carbon literacy training, sustainability leadership training, all sorts of things for people who want to do that. So the climate action plan is around 4 pillars, which are on the slides: decarbonisation, adaptation, resilience, climate education, green careers and biodiversity. And climate ambassadors can work on one of those pillars, or they can work more holistically with an education setting. So as I said, we run all across England and we're fully funded by the Department for Education, so it's totally free for anyone who wants to be involved. And we've got a number of sister projects as well, so Sustainability Support for Education, which is like a resource hub online. Let's Go Zero, and National Education Nature Parks, who are other free organisations who lead programmes in the area of climate action, sustainability and education. I'm sure I don't have to try and argue with you guys about why it's so important, but basically schools and education settings have a massive impact because of the great and green space that they have and the amount of emissions that they give off. So we've got a huge impact to be had in that sector. And at the moment, I'm working with lots of councils. So I've already done some work with Child Friendly Leeds. On Thursday, I'm hosting an event with North Yorkshire Council where they've got lots of council members for things like energy and carbon emissions and things like that. And they're all coming together with about 36 people from education settings. And those education setting representatives are going to go away with a climate action plan that they've kind of drafted out, and they're going to have the support from different areas of the council to make sure that any challenges that they face hopefully are overcome on that day. So that's on Thursday, and it's been really lovely working with them and with Leeds Council as well, but obviously we want to work more with everybody. We also work with all of the universities in Yorkshire and Humber and lots of employers and local action groups as well within communities. These are just some examples of our climate ambassadors. So we've got a real range of people, retired people, parents, students, and people who are employed. Often their roles are related to climate action or sustainability, or they're just very passionate about it as well. I'm just whizzing through because I'm very conscious of time. Anyone who wants to be a climate ambassador gets full training. So you get safeguarding training so that you can work in schools safely, and climate ambassador training to give you information about what a climate action plan is. And then we've also got optional further training. You get access to a network of people within Yorkshire and Humberside who have taken action in this sector. You also get a free enhanced DBS check. Again, to support you working in schools, and there's lots and lots and lots of resources that people can access as well. All we ask for is that you're eligible for a DBS, you're very passionate about working with education settings towards climate action, and that you can give us a commitment of 1 day a year over 3 activities. So it's not a massive commitment. And what we ask from local authorities, which we have had already from Leeds City Council, but we would like more of, is to kind of expose us to a lot of your employees for skills and expertise within the local context. Give us some advertising, if possible, to voluntary schemes that are within your organisation and education settings. And obviously there's loads of benefits to that with social value goals, giving back to your local community and having that engagement with an environmental and sustainability lens. I think that's 5 minutes. It was a whistle-stop tour, but if anyone's interested at all, I will pop my email address in the chat and you can reach out to me for further discussions if you want to work with me in the organisation any further. Is that okay? Any questions?
That's absolutely fabulous. Thank you. And I would most definitely urge you all to jot Ruth's contact details down and get in touch. But also, Ruth, are you happy for us to share those with schools? Because lots of people have connections in their wards with their local schools.
Absolutely, yeah. We're very keen to get schools on board, and they don't really have to do anything, but I've just got loads of resources that they can have for free. So even if they just want to get those resources, that's absolutely fine. And then if they've got, really passionate governors or parents, then we love to kind of offer them the training as well to see if they want to be have more meaningful action within their school community.
That would be brilliant. And are you okay to share the slides?
Yeah, I'll send them over to you in an email if you'd like.
That'd be super. And are we then okay to share those on?
Yep, absolutely.
Super, because I think that would be great if we can then put them, around with the schools that we work with and with people that might be interested. I saw Councillor Shazad's hand go up and go away again.
Yes, it did go up, Chair, but you asked the question that I wanted to ask about sharing the slides and so on and forth, so I thought it's pointless me taking up more time.
Thank you. Okay, well, that's super. That's an action for us to do, and we will most certainly do that, Ruth, and be in touch with you. Thanks ever so much.
Great. Thank you very much, everyone. I'll probably get off now because I've got loads of work to do, but thanks for having me.
Brilliant. Thank you. Thanks very much, Ruth.
Bye.
Okay. So we're now over to Mike, who is our second open forum contributor.
Hi all. My name's Mike. I'm from Boston Spa Green Group, Community Green Group. I've got a slide thing again. Should I try and share that?
Why not? Yes, thank you.
So just allow to share screen. Okay, so if I go to that, I share entire screen. Okay, here we go. Okay, so I assume you can see that.
Yep, can see that. Thank you.
Okay, cool. All right, so just literally going through some of the things I thought it might be interesting just to sort of say what we've been doing, and hopefully some of you guys can learn from the things we've benefited from, we've learned, and some of the mistakes we've made. So just recently I've been doing a bit of hedge laying. This is a really good thing. You can get other people involved in it. It's not as dangerous and dodgy as it sounds. There's a lot of it. It can be quite good fun. And realistically, with hedge laying, you can't break a hedge. It's very, very hard to spoil it. If a hedge has got too big, you can lay that down, and it provides really good habitat for wildlife. So it's a really good thing. This gives you an idea of what a hedge looks like as it's got a little bit older. So this is like a third year growth. And you can see on this one, I've just cut the top of this hedge. That allows the subsequent years to grow and regenerate. You don't get any berries if you cut a hedge. Like most of the hedges in the Leeds area are cut on all three sides every year. You're not going to get any berries at all. They need that second and third and even fourth year to create great habitat for wildlife and birds and eggs and the berries and everything that come with that. The other thing that I think is really important that people quite often forget is cutting of a hedge. If you can cut it in increments, ideally around about 80 millimeters increments, you can get a massive amount of density into a hedge, which creates a great carbon store, area for wildlife, for insects to overwinter, etc., etc. So if anybody's got any control of any hedge cutting, it would be brilliant if you would help to push a better hedge cutting regime. It'll also save money because you cut one side a year. So choose one side, the front, the back, the side. Obviously, you've got exclusions for things like roads, sight lines, footpaths where it gets encroaches and things like that. But anywhere else, there's no need to cut a hedge, and the hedge benefits so much more by doing it that way. So literally, as I was saying here, as you can see with the diagram, 3 years growth, you can get a super dense hedge really, really fast. It makes a big difference. This is some more examples. We just did a little bit of work in the local car park. I was teaching hedge laying at Harewood House Estate. So there was a group of the estate that I taught hedge laying. Another thing which I think is really important is a lot of you may get involved in doing tree work. If you do get involved in tree work, a wonderful thing to try and do is to try and use this idea of, do you have to fell the tree? If you do have to fell the tree, if the tree does need some work doing to it, can it be pruned or can it be pollarded instead of being felled? And if you are going to have to cut it, can you leave it as a monolith? A monolith is, which is basically just the trunk staying up in the air. It reduces any safety hazard dramatically, and the tree surgeon will advise on what height it can safely be left, which is much, much better. Some of the stumps are really, really important for wildlife. They're a great carbon store. The whole thing degrades slower, therefore it holds more carbon for longer. Also, leaving tree trunks in big limbs is really, really good. Another habit everybody has is turning all the brush into chips, and little chips that disappear into the ground quite quickly. A brush pile creates a better habitat. You get slower degrading of the carbon resource, and it's a really, really good source for wildlife. So again, you can just make little brush piles, dead hedges, or habitat hedges, as we prefer to call them. And this is what we've been doing in the village. We've got lesser stag beetle in the area. The red dots show you all where they actually are. So mainly down south, but we're getting quite a few up north, just above the Humber. You can see a few. So it's really important to try and keep a little bit of habitat. But these guys need a few years in a piece of wood before they can complete their life cycle. So burying a bit of dead wood, holding these stumps and keeping larger lumps of wood is really, really important. Tree orchards. We've planted a few tree orchards around the village. We've one of the biggest problems we've had is we were sort of like felt pressure to cut the grass around all the trees, and doing so we found over 20 frogs cutting the grass. Some of them I think may have been chopped into pieces. So cutting grass is a really great thing if you can just stop cutting the grass. It's a wonderful, wonderful thing. We also got a problem with the council coming around and cutting, trimming around the trees. As you can see, the image on the right there, it's absolutely devastated. That tree is probably going to die. So from going from a big fruity tree to nothing, it's quite sad. Planting in urban areas is always an awkward one. Some areas people don't want to plant because of utilities and things. So in that respect, you can use plant little borders, shrubs and things. It's always a great thing. Creates a little microclimate, a little bit of carbon store and capture in an area without causing too much disruption to anything. This is an area that we planted with some smaller trees, some rowans. And the rowans, they don't get stupidly big, so you've never got any great worries about them falling and causing problems in the same way as a big 80-foot tree. So that was the other thing. We've been quickly working with a bit of planning to try and create some areas. One where our sort of successes is we managed to get a developer to change a boundary, which was going to be just a tiny little hedge and a wooden fence, to being actually called a habitat corridor and make it a lot wider. So trying to work with developers is one of our goals as well. One of the other things I'll leave you with, which is I see quite a lot of areas which I think we can do, jobs we could do if anybody's interested. Some of like an example of an area on the Leeds Ring Road, there's emergence trees. There's basically a lack on this section of the ring road here, and I could have chosen anywhere, but this area is near Ninja Warrior Adventure Centre on the ring road. Grass cutting, all this section here with the green arrows, I don't see any reason to cut half of that grass. It would save money, increase carbon and help wildlife. Hedge cutting, that hedge is cut on 3 sides each year. Why? It only needs to be cut on one side. Again, it's a third of the bill. So just little ideas that you can either think are useful or reject, but I just feel it's worth putting them forward. And that's about it. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing that and some really interesting ideas. And I will most definitely be in touch with you specifically about that area that you've just mentioned there. Are you okay for other people who are on this call to get in touch with you if they'd like to pick up on?
Of course, yeah. I don't know how to unshare this screen though. Where's I can't find the button. Can you do it? Or do I don't
know. Are you stuck with us for the whole meeting? I don't know whether anybody can. So.
I think it's the same button as you press to share your screen. You know, the share button just next to the lead.
Yeah, button. I can't see any button from the call now. But sorry, guys. Is it? Oh, is that one there? Stop sharing. There we go. I found it. Cool.
Brilliant. Thank you. Thanks ever so much. And if you're happy to put your contact details into the chat before you disappear, that would be great. And then I will certainly be in touch with you, and anybody else, please feel free to do so too. Yeah, thank you.
Indeed. Okay.
Thank you for your time. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Bye.
Thanks very much. Bye.
Bye.
Okay. So apologies, Dan, for making you wait, but we have flipped things around a little bit, and you're going to be next on our agenda. So please feel free to start.
Thanks very much, Councillor Dye. What I'm going to do is just, in the manner of everyone else so far, is to share a brief presentation and take everybody through a summary of the activity that the wider Children and Families Directorate, as well as Learning, has been engaged in over the course of the year. Talk a little bit about the Leeds Children's Mayor and some of the stats, which are quite telling actually in terms of our My Health, My School survey, which we run every year, which talks a little bit about the children's experiences and what they're telling us, which is really important. And then there might be a little bit of time just to talk about some of the early thinking we've got around a sort of place-based curriculum for the city, which will take a long time to develop, but we've had some conversations about that. So I'll just share my screen now. 1 second. So hopefully you should be able to see that.
Yep, can see that.
You got that? Okay,
yep.
So I'll get cracking then. So this is really the update from the Children and Families Directorate. As I said, but just about the Leeds Children's Mayor. Let's have a look, see if we can move this forward. So this is an update from the last Children's Mayor, effectively, because his term is now concluded. So we can talk a little bit about some of the action that he did during his year. So our Children's Mayor was Mohammed, and he was working all across Leeds. And we just wanted to talk about some of the things that he'd done. So first of all, he won one of the Leeds Global Learning Awards. So some of you will have perhaps attended those when they were presented in the banqueting suite last year, which was great in terms of using his voice to raise awareness. He went to 27 events throughout the year in role, which sounds like an awful lot of things to have gone to, which is great, including speaking at Coral and I think at this meeting as well, actually, over the course of the year. And he was a great advocate. He spent some time promoting the Young Person's Toolkit, which we used hashtag Leeds by example. And I know a number of you in the room will be familiar with that as well. He also created an organic garden, a composting scheme, and did loads of work planting trees with the Eco Council at his school. He also spent time organising community litter picks and advocating for that to become a regular occurrence. So just a little bit of a flavour of what some of the young people in the city have been engaged in, and particularly our Children's Mayor. I'll move on to... There's a little bit of a delay, sorry, on the clicker. Here we are. Worth just kind of reminding ourselves why this is important to us within the Directorate, aside from what we think is important. You'll all be familiar with the Child Friendly Leeds wishes, 12 wishes, which we essentially developed now more than a decade ago in response to a big conversation which with children and young people, which we've recently rerun and refreshed the wishes. But there are 2 wishes on there which we think are really specifically linked to the climate. Obviously, wish 5, everyone takes more action to protect the environment from climate change, very explicitly in relation to climate. And then also wish 12, children and young people can travel around the city safely and easily. Of course, there's some real overlaps there in terms of sustainable transport, which there are all sorts of bits of work going on about. I'm going to talk about this in a second on the next slide, but just wanted to sort of situate the why. It isn't just because we within the Directorate and school leadership think it's a good idea. Children are telling us explicitly that this is one of their key priorities. We know that anyway. Let's move on. So just a little bit of an update then from us on what's been done within Children and Families around Wish 5. So we've done some work to promote the climate change action route map for schools. That's really about how we've been able to promote that through our ongoing engagement with schools at both the Secondary Eco Summit and some climate education training, which happened actually in June 23. But again, we're looking a year back. That was before I arrived. We're also reviewing the climate action plan. It's not at a stage where it could be published at that point, but children and young people are at the heart, and involving the communities in the city as well. We've had 3 primary schools in the city where we've run free workshops in the school between November 23 and Feb 24. 4 schools attended the Twilight training on supporting climate education in 2023 as well. We've had a number of guest blogs which were shared on the child-friendly Leeds blog. So we can say that we've kind of met 2 goals from within that piece of work. I'm going to quickly shift on again. So again, talking about how we are listening to children and what the plans are based on what we've been told through the My Health, My School survey. So we've developed some short-term goals for this year and some longer-term goals over the next 5 years, 4 now really, or 3.5. So short-term wise, 2025, it's that continuous raising of awareness of the climate action route map for schools and settings. This is about not just raising awareness, but also monitoring uptake and encouraging participation in that work. We want to explore opportunities to develop climate awards, perhaps along the same lines as the last awards ceremony that I talked about previously. We're also hoping to design and deliver, in partnership, a schools event to focus on the role of the sustainability lead. So you heard us talking earlier on in this conversation about that, and perhaps seeing how we can encourage and support all schools in the city eventually to have that sustainability lead and develop the climate action plans that we want those people to lead on. Longer term, we want to make sure that we're linking in with the Employment and Skills Directorate. I know we've got some colleagues in the room today around green skills and opportunities as part of that kind of broader green growth plan. There's going to be huge opportunities over the coming decades, actually, as we see inward investment and different companies and businesses setting up or relocating to or expanding into Leeds and wider West Yorkshire region. So that's an opportunity for our children and young people as they mature into adulthood, hopefully with the right skill set to actually go into jobs in those areas and sectors. We want to establish targets for implementation by schools and settings as part of that CALM activity that I was talking about previously. We also want to identify and support best practice sharing between schools, almost you might call it a community of practice, so that we can share the best practice across the city, so that we can speed up and accelerate the impact that schools are able to have in this area. This is something which I think is quite important to share. This is an excerpt from the My Health, My School survey from 23-24. And I suppose there's 3 key questions which we asked, and this is some of the impact from them, or in terms of what children are telling us anyway. The first one is about how much information you've had. This is how much information children think that they have had in relation to climate change. So it's a very sort of marginal to relatively significant decrease in pupil perception of the amount of information they've had, which is, I think, probably cause for concern. But I wouldn't want to draw conclusions at this point. It might mean something different. It might mean that people know enough, and I'm not really sure what that tells us. But it's a decrease, and I suppose that's a worry. To make sure you're safe and healthy, would you know where to get help or advice about climate change? Yes. So there's an interesting, given the last question, a marginal to relatively significant increase in children saying they would know where to get help or advice about climate change. So my question would be, if we're not doing enough in terms of giving information, but people know where to find it, do those 2 contradict each other, or is it that we've been putting more emphasis on signposting? It's an interesting question, perhaps, to stimulate a debate. And then this is quite an interesting and I think a very positive one, is how good do you think your college or school is at responding to climate change and the emergency? I think you can see there, as year on year from 22-23 to 23-24, a really significant increase in the number of students who answered yes, that the school was good at responding to the climate change emergency, which feels like more schools are getting interested in and more schools are embedding this area of work as part of their bread and butter. So I think that's another interesting thing perhaps for us to talk about in the questions. Just kind of dividing the activity up then into other bits within the learning part and the wider directorate. So from a school assets perspective, that's essentially buildings. We are obviously working with the DFE to deliver the school rebuilding programme, which is a rolling programme. It gets rebranded every so often, but essentially is the national government's capital funding for rebuilding schools that are out of condition. And as part of that, there's obviously a really clear mandate to make sure that new buildings are sustainable. And that's about being more energy efficient and having carbon neutral building materials as well as the buildings themselves. We've match funded the public sector decarbonisation scheme bids, and that's about gas boilers and air source heat pumps and other heating systems and solar panels, etc. And we've committed and spent a total of more than £3 million over the last 4 years from the capital budget as part of that work. We're also supporting schools to devise really good development plans for their schools to manage the estate priorities in their buildings around that activity. And we're also from a children's transport perspective, really continuing to invest in our independent travel training programme. This is a huge priority for us in terms of not just because it means that more children are able to access mass transit opportunities, which are inherently more economic and efficient from both financial and a kind of environmental perspective. It's also really good in terms of their future life outcomes. The more independent people are able to travel earlier, the better outcomes they have as adults as they move out into adult life. So it's really, really important that we continue to drive that. I'm not going to link to the video, but I will share the presentation with you. You can see some of the impact statements and sort of testimonials of how impactful that work has been. We'll obviously continue to do that. I'm going to move across into the last slide, which talks just a little bit about what a couple of more strategic things and some more advanced plans for activity this year. So plans are underway for this year's Climate Schools Eco Conference, this year targeted at Key Stage 2 and 3, which is that kind of bridge across primary and secondary. That's happening at the end of March. We're also working on plans for a deputy head in Leeds to support delivering activity and continuous professional development to teachers in other Leeds schools on the role of that sustainability lead, which we've talked a lot about already today. Herd Farm Activity Centre on the right hand side, working with the university student sustainability consultancy, essentially developing a habitat survey in relation to the new pond at the activity centre, and that's going to provide advice and guidance about how to attract more wildlife to the site, but it will also be something which we can share with other organisations across the city. The final bit, which on the bottom left here, is some of the conversations we've had, and Councillor Dye and others in the room actually today have been part of these conversations about how we can leverage all of the different relationships and organisations in the city to develop a really long-term proposition for a climate place-based curriculum, which will take, I think, probably quite a long time to develop, but we can start with it early. Essentially, it's about using our place, our environment, our countryside and our green spaces, as well as business, factories and industry, to develop really good, high quality learning opportunities related to the environment and climate, which don't solely rely on school teachers to have to deliver them, and it creates a symbiotic relationship between the school and the organisation as well as giving children a really good, robust spiral curriculum where they are able to experience real learning opportunities and not just abstract kind of worksheets, but really being there, which then if we get it right, we'll see our school system delivering really, really good quality people with the right skills and the right level of passion and excitement and care about their place to then move into and be part of that skills pipeline for all of those organisations that we want to attract to Leeds, that we want to grow within Leeds, whether it's about sustainable energy, whether it's about flood management, whether it's about carbon sequestration. We need the right curriculum so that children and young people, as they come out of the education system, are ready to move into the work and employment opportunities that those organisations will provide. So very early stages that conversation is at, but I think really exciting and a lot of potential there around also improving things like attendance and mental health and outcomes for all sorts of different performance indicators across education, as well as the skills piece. So I'll pause there. I think that's my last slide. If there are any questions, I'll happily take them.
Thank you very much, Dan. Thanks for sharing that. Clearly, that's really, really important work. I'm going to open it up to questions. Do you want to put your virtual hand up if you'd like to ask a question, please? First one on my list is Councillor Bromley.
Hi there, Dan. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes, yeah. Sorry. Thank you for that, Dan. That was really good and really positive to hear. And especially towards the end, you're talking regards like looking towards the future. It sounded really like sort of connected between like sort of STEM, maybe forest school, and looking at like climate action coming involved in that for curriculum and education. I just wondered if we're looking at that interlink being as well in terms of like well-being connected to outdoor and climate and our environmental spaces as well.
Councillor, are you happy for me to just come back on with these?
Yes, please just come back.
Yeah, really, really good question. So for me, we don't get this very often, but sometimes one action can be a really good panacea for all sorts of things. And for me, the wellbeing thing is massive. I mean, we know that our school curriculum over the last decade and a bit has narrowed and become less inclusive and more content heavy and much harder in terms of terminal examinations. And we hear a lot, and people talk about mental health crisis a lot, and that is manifestly visible in the low attendance rates still post-COVID that we see across the country and certainly in Leeds. So for me, there's a public health, there's a mental health, there's an emotional health and well-being, as well as really positive kind of planned curriculum to deliver in terms of this as well. So doing this work ticks, I hate saying ticks lots of boxes because it's not a box ticking exercise, but it hits lots of things that we want to achieve, and one of them is the well-being piece.
Can I jump back in, Chair?
Yes, please do.
I just to note that really pleases me to hear as well, and I'd imagine most of us in the room as well. So thank you, Dan, for bringing that to us and just having that awareness as well. Gives us light at the end of the tunnel.
Brilliant, thank you. Councillor Stables is next on my list.
Thank you. Dan, I just wanted to come back to you and ask you a little bit about the Herd Farm Activity Centre, because I've just looked up where it is and it's not actually that far away from where we are, and I wasn't aware of it. So how does that link up with schools? Is it primary? Is it secondary? How do schools link up with it?
So that's a really good question. I don't know too much about Herd Farm, and although I've been in role for a year now, there's still quite a lot of places that are still on my list to visit. So I wouldn't want to say too much without having been there, but my sense is that it probably does more around the primary and alternative provision sort of work, mainly because there's probably slightly more flexibility from a curriculum perspective from those parts of the sector. It needn't be the case, and that's part of one of the things I want to do, is to sort of engage more secondary schools in the sense that doing work within the context of the outdoors and the environment doesn't have to be more work to do. It can be instead of work to do, and I think that's a really critical kind of sort of thought process to really land, is that we can deliver the whole or the majority of the curriculum in a completely different space with the city as the classroom and the countryside surrounding it. I can't talk too much about Herd Farm because I would be misleading you to sort of say that I knew more about it than what I've said already.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to bring Councillor Harrington in now.
Hi, thanks, Dan. I think you'll find that the youth work team do have quite a lot of contacts with Herd Farm. So that may be a way into the secondary school age groups of children that you're talking about. Possibly Lynn Cherry might be a good person to contact.
That's really helpful. Thank you. And these are people. It takes a really long time to bed into Leeds because it's such a big place and so many people to meet. But thank you. That's really kind. Lynn Cherry. I'll look her up.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for that, Councillor Shazad.
Thank you, Chair. Thanks for that presentation, Dan. Just a quick question. How is it going with the schools? Are we getting interest from the ones that are run by the council, the state schools, and how is it going with the academies? Is there pushback from them regards the climate work and doing the climate activities? Because obviously the academies are more, like you said, terminal exams and all that, and more on results based. But are they actually coming along on the agenda with us, or are they not working with us? How are they actually going with the schools?
So it's a really good question. And I think that to an extent there's a bit of a false dichotomy within our sector about academies and local authority maintained schools in terms of what they do and how they work. You know, we work with all schools in the city, and I've certainly not come up against any sort of challenge or pushback from any type of school, whether they be local authority maintained or academies. And you know, nationally the majority of schools are academies now, and certainly in the city the majority of secondary schools are academies, but they all have the same performance metrics and the same curriculum challenges. They have to deliver the same stuff, they're held to account in the same way, and they have the same budgets. And so I wouldn't want us to see them as separate as perhaps some of the reporting nationally might seek to position them as. In terms of the take up, it really is. It's really, you know, concentric. It's a series of concentric circles where the work is started very small, and it's largely within the primary sector. There are a couple of secondaries that are really taking this and running with it, but I think that's probably because the primary curriculum is much probably easier to flex around an environmental model than the secondary one is. It doesn't need to be that way at all, but there's probably a bit more work to do in terms of selling actually what the benefits to some of those performance metrics are, which are not always so obvious to see when you look at the national curriculum. All of the content that you've got to teach, it can sometimes be a bit of a barrier to seeing yourself doing that in the outside and through an environmental lens, which is why what we're trying to do with the schools that are sitting around the table with us literally. So a couple of weeks ago at the climate, what's it called? The Climate Committee, I think it was called. Is that what it's called, Councillor Dine? Climate Committee?
Commission,
that's it. Apologies. The Climate Commission, they're sitting around the table. But there are a couple of secondaries who are involved. And I think what we need to do is work with them, succeed with them, get the testimony, get the positive impact, and gradually increase those concentric circles so that we get more and more schools involved in the conversation, because people can see that it isn't just the right thing to do, it's actually beneficial to all of the other outcomes and performance measures that people are concerned about.
Thank you. Did you want to come back, Councillor Shazad?
No, thanks. That was really well answered by Dan, and it's good to see that the academies and the state-run schools are all working together, and they're actually taking on this agenda. And it'd be great to get more secondary schools on board. And I know, obviously, it's more understandable because, obviously, with their GCSEs and other exams coming up, they might have a limit. But I think if they start secondary schools, and I think that will actually be really good for the mental health, as Councillor Bromley said, for those that are going into those stressful periods of exams, and it'll be good for their well-being as well. So I think it'd be great if you could get those testimonies and get more secondary schools on board.
Brilliant, thank you.
Absolutely.
Okay, so Councillor Ray's next on my list.
Yeah, I was really concerned about the wellbeing effect of children being educated in places like that. My day job, I run Crystal Valley Farm, and we do a lot of children's play schemes and education and have school visits and things. And the children respond so well. They're the ones that often fall outside, coping very well in the classroom. But that green space and the open air and everything has a calming effect, and they really benefit from that. So thank you, Councillor Bromley, and really interesting what's going on, Dan.
Thank you for that, and I think it's really clear, isn't it, the link, and you know, the more you talk to schools that really are invested, the benefits are really clear. So if we can capture that and showcase it, I think that's certainly something that a lot of schools can learn from. Any more questions from anybody else? Okay, in that case, can I ask you one, Dan? One of the things that you talked about was the sustainability leads, and I think that's something we can really build on. I think that's a really important thing that's currently happening in schools. Mm-hmm. And you talked about putting on an event, which I think we should absolutely support. Do you know if there is any kind of register kept, or whether we as a city have the capacity to do that, so that we know who sustainability leads are? Mm-hmm.
So 2 questions. The first one is that I suspect that we don't have a register. That we keep a register of things like designated teachers for children looked after, because there's a kind of statutory element there which we have a sort of requirement to monitor. We probably don't, but there's absolutely no reason why we couldn't, and it would probably be quite an easy thing to do. Of course, across 250 odd schools, there's going to be quite a lot of churn, and so that would need to be monitored, regularly. They would probably have to do a sort of termly return on that, but it probably could be automated. I don't see why we couldn't keep a record, and then that would help us to stay in touch with that community of practice that I was talking about previously, in terms of the engine room of that work in schools across the city. I'll take that as an action, Councillor Dye.
Thank you. Yeah, if you would, that would be absolutely brilliant, because I know what it's like, both from being on the receiving end and the sending end, that if you just drop an email to info at a particularly, a big busy high school, it will never ever get read. So being able to directly address people who we could talk to, I think, is really important. Okay, anybody else got any questions? Okay, so we've got one action to look at developing a register, and I would just add to that, Dan, if there's anything that we as a committee can do to support any of this work, really happy to look at any of the things that you've talked about. Specifically, really interested in the climate awards. Be very happy to be involved in a SEAC award of some description, but that would be really good to promote the work that's happening. And as I've said, any of the work with the sustainability leads, if you're organising an event, please just reach out to us.
Well, I'll that's really great. Thank you, Councillor Dye. And what I'll do is another action then is I'll take away to make sure that the person tasked with planning that awards event, it can be linked specifically in with you. And I think that would be really good. And there might be an opportunity to have some presence from this advisory committee, perhaps at the awards. Maybe I'll I'll talk to them.
Yeah, absolutely. That would be brilliant. Thank you very much. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for having me. Nice to see you all.
Thank you. Thanks very
Cheers,
much.
Bye.
Okay, so let's move on. I'm going to have we got Tom with us? I'm going to leave Rachel the working group update until the very last, I think, because you're sticking around with us, and I'm conscious that we've held people around for a while. So are we all okay to move to your item, Tom, item 6, which is the local area energy plan?
Thanks very much, Chair. Thanks, everyone. Nice to be here today. So yeah, I have a presentation, so bear with me whilst I share my screen. Can everyone see that okay? Okay, great, thanks. So I'm presenting today about the West Yorkshire Local Area Energy Plan. So yeah, I'll start with a bit of background, a bit of context about LEAPs in general. Sorry, that's the acronym LAEP, but we shorten it to LEAP, even though it's a misspelling. But yeah, it's more convenient that way. So yeah, so what are LEAPs in general? So in general terms, they're a tool to help local areas determine their pathway to net zero. Essentially, the idea is it helps an area with a net zero ambition, like Leeds has, like West Yorkshire has, by setting out what activities and projects are needed to achieve that ambition. They're an established tool that they're promoted by the government via the Innovate UK and the Energy Systems Catapult. They're generally led by local government in one form or another. And the key thing to bear in mind about them is that they look to deal with specifics. So what projects, what actions are needed, when and where they need to be carried out. They, by necessity, have a long-term outlook because they're dealing with net zero. But the idea is the document, the plan is produced and then it's updated. It's a living document on average every 3 or 5 years or so. So that the key benefit, I suppose, from our perspective, from a local area's perspective, is that focus on tangible outcomes and projects really helps to sort of generate and drive investment in the green economy. By understanding what projects need to be prioritised, that sort of helps to channel activity and work on particular projects, and then it also clarifies where external investment's needed, and that having all that information in one place helps. It can act as an investment prospectus effectively, attracting outside investment into those projects that are needed to deliver decarbonisation. The timing is another thing that benefits us as well. The final plan is scheduled to be produced in September this year. It should dovetail quite nicely with the local plan update as well. There's a lot of ambition in there around decarbonisation, so being able to tie that to particular projects is quite fortuitous for us. The timing's pretty good. So yeah, next slide. So it's just a little bit about the national context there, to show that they're quite an established tool and there's a lot of work going on around the country. There's quite a few areas you can see there. The dark pink ones are where areas that already have a local area energy plan in place. The light pink ones are where it's under development, and the green ones are a little further behind the process, where they've got an understanding of the baseline energy, but the process of actually producing the plan for emissions reduction isn't quite started yet. So yeah, in particular, the specifics about what we're doing with the West Yorkshire LEAP. In terms of the outputs and deliverables of it, the main one is the report itself, as you'd imagine. But that plan it'll incorporate 4 individual area LEAPs. So that's the 5 areas of West Yorkshire minus, well, Calderdale already have done their own LEAP exercise. I think it was published last year, so they're already ahead of the rest of us. What they've done is being incorporated into the wider West Yorkshire LEAP, but new local area energy plans for each of those other 4 areas will be produced, including Leeds. it'll also develop scenarios, develop different pathways. So not just so building on a sort of baseline scenario, it'll look at the different ways to reaching net zero. So and this is born out of the carbon emissions reduction pathways work that WICA did. I think it was about 5 years ago. Looking at a baseline, looking at different scenarios to reach net zero. One was a sort of maximum technical pathway, and then there was a more realistic one as well. So there'll be some work developing those out into more tangible actions. And there's also a really big stakeholder engagement exercise as well. So I'll cover that in a bit more detail later on in this. So yes, it's obviously a WICA led project. It builds on those scenarios as I've just mentioned. WICA have appointed PricewaterhouseCoopers to undertake the delivery. So they've got them on board, and they're leading on the actual delivery of the work and the production of the report and carrying out the research and data gathering and the stakeholder engagement as well. Local authorities are assisting with this work, but we're not leading. We're not receiving any resource for this. So our role is to sort of assist where we can and be as helpful as we can with the work that PwC are undertaking. There's a steering group through which a lot of that it takes place. So that includes all the local authorities. It also includes other major stakeholders, such as key figures from the energy sector, other key figures from other sectors as well. So I'll spend a little bit of time on this slide. This is the progress. What's happened so far, and the next steps as well. So yes, so what the project started. The graphic is a little bit small, but you can see that the project started in June last year. Up to this point, there's been a lot of apart from the initial mobilisation, there's been a lot of data gathering. So getting all sort of possible relevant data sets, ensuring that PwC have access to those to kind of inform the last milestone, which was carried out, which is the baseline scenario report. So this was met a couple of months ago. I can't share too many specifics as it's a WICA document and they haven't approved it for publication. But essentially, talking about it in general terms, it sets out the composition of the energy systems in West Yorkshire at the moment. So looking at inputs and outputs, broken down by things like economic sectors, fuel types. And then because it's a baseline scenario report, it sets out the trajectory of development if current policies were to continue effectively a sort of do nothing scenario. I can't share specifics, but in effect that shows a slow decline, as you might expect, a slow decline from where we are, but the extensive investment is required. So that is going to be under the next steps. That's going to be developed into developing out further scenarios from that baseline report. So looking at the technical maximum and a more realistic scenario for development, which is the preferred one that WICA have put forward. The current focus that we're on at the moment is around stakeholder engagement. So there's a really big stakeholder engagement exercise that we're supporting. Obviously, we need to make sure that all council services with an interest in this work are represented, and then as wide a range of external stakeholders as possible. So that's covering any significant energy users, so business, industry, any other sectors that are relevant, agriculture, for example, transport operators, other key figures from like the energy infrastructure sector. So people like Northern Gas Networks, Northern Power Grid, any energy providers, ensure that they're all represented, and sector interests as well. So people like the Chamber of Commerce, and then voluntary sector as well. So the key thing of this is understanding the priorities of all stakeholders in terms of decarbonisation, getting clarity on what existing plans are for around decarbonisation as well. So, for example, if you've got a I don't know, a particularly big user of energy, a big factory or manufacturer, understanding what plans they have for decarbonisation currently, and then sort of comparing that with what's understood to be needed from the baseline scenario. And then understanding what specific projects are therefore planned and required to fill in those gaps to ensure that net zero is met by the 2038 target that WICA have. So that stakeholder engagement work that's currently underway will be used to further develop those scenarios. So looking at what is the maximum that's possible, and then what a more realistic pathway between the baseline and the kind of do maximum one is going to look like. So using the stakeholder input to draft those, understand what those scenarios look like. And then once we've got that, then what's needed at individual project level. So that key benefit of LEAPS, understanding that sort of granular project-based understanding of decarbonisation. That's the sort of point when you've got those developed scenarios. That's when that starts to become clear. Once that has been drafted and then refined, we'll be looking at developing those into those individual area LEAPS. So at that point we'll have a specific draft plan for Leeds, which will be drafted and then refined. And once that's been through that process, then that'll all feed into the individual LEAP report in which is due to be published end of September. So that's an overview of LEAPS, where the current progress that's been made and future steps. I'd hoped I'm happy to take questions on any aspects of it. I had hoped we'd be able to discuss some of those baseline scenarios a little bit more, but I can't share too much of the specifics, unfortunately. But I've put some pointers for discussion in that final slide. But as I said, I'm happy to take any questions on any aspects of that.
Thank you. Sorry, I was trying to find the right button there. Thank you, Tom, for that. On my slide deck that you had, it showed slide 5 of 6. Should there have been a 6 to share with us?
That was the last one, was a discussion slide. I'm not sure. I can. Basically, that just had 3 points that I thought we could discuss, but I'm happy to take, as I said, I'm happy to take questions on anything. But feedback on process and timescales is one. Priority sectors and projects. If anyone has anything that should be prioritised in anyone's view, and further as well as further input from the committee into this as well, looking at where those milestones are and the future steps of the project. So suggestions for when the input of this committee is welcome. There's another thing that we could focus on.
Brilliant. Okay, thank you. So bearing that in mind, let's go straight to Councillor Stables.
Thank you, Tom, for that presentation. Really interesting. I appreciate it's all at a very high level at the moment, because one of the things I was going to ask you was, well, what's the current scenario? Because you're talking about lots of different scenarios without any detail on it at all. Sounds like you can't share that with us. So that was my first. I'll just fire some questions at you and you can come back. So that was one of them. And I wondered if there was any kind of graph that you've got which shows, where we are currently in West Yorkshire in terms of decarbonisation versus what the plan was. How it sounded from what you were saying like it's not doing as well as we hoped, but there was no information to see really on that. So I'd be interested to see that.
It's not so much that we're not doing as well as we hoped. It's more that it takes a scenario that was already described in a high level in that SERP piece of work. So yeah, that report that we can't share, and you're right, it does have a lot more detail. It's a very technical report which has a lot of detail. I can't understand why WICA don't want to share it until it's finalised. But I'm hoping that they will fairly soon, and I'm happy to share that in greater detail then. But it's just about understanding where we are really, and what will happen if we don't do anything, or that policies don't change.
So where are we?
In terms of
you know, compared to, so the question was, where there will have been a plan that we're trying to hit. Where are we now compared to the plan?
The plan it's not about, it doesn't compare progress against an existing plan. It's not a progress report, it's a baseline report. So it says where we are. It doesn't talk about it in reference to a previous plan. That isn't the purpose of it. It's just describing the current energy systems of West Yorkshire, in terms of how much energy is produced, how much is used, which sectors different fuel sources go to, and then an extrapolation of that by 2038, which will show that we are not where, which does show that we're not where we would need to be in terms of net zero by 2038 for sure. But the subsequent work, the development of those other scenarios, is to demonstrate that what would a technical maximum effort look like, and then something that is more realistic, a bit more of a kind of practical approach. So that's what the ultimate plan is going to look like.
Sorry, Chair, can I just come back?
You certainly can.
Thank you. So I presume, because it is so high level, it's quite difficult to get into any kind of conversation on this, because presumably you've then, you've broken it down, it breaks it down by sector as well, and looks at how, you've talked that obviously, which area are we failing on? So is it, on transport? Is it on the energy sector? Is it on industry? Presumably, is that what the plan will it look in detail at each area as to where we are now and where we're hoping to get to, broken down, and over what period of time is it based as well?
The last point is it's the stated goal of WICA is 2038 net zero. So that's the framing of it. It goes into a lot of detail. So it does look at sector by sector. It doesn't presenting it as failing on any particular measure isn't the way that it's presented. But I think the way that it is framed is that that each individual, it will look at each individual sector, each individual in terms of sector of the economy, each part of the energy system, understanding what is needed to get to that 2038 target, and then what is needed to be done, and then an understanding of what's already planned, what's in the pipeline, what needs further investment, needs further development, and sort of marrying those two up essentially. So understanding the gaps and what needs to take place in order to meet that 2038 target.
Okay.
I appreciate it is high level, and it's the more detailed discussion will come, I think, when we have the specifics of the particular plans for each individual area.
Okay.
Thank you. I'm going to bring in Councillor Rowntree now.
Thank you, Chair, and thanks, Tom, for that. Appreciate the constraints preventing you from sharing much concrete at this stage. I just wonder if I could get you to share a couple of clues as to the kind of things that might appear in the plan when it emerges. It looks to me from the Gantt chart like perhaps the most exciting phase is the one that's sort of getting up steam at the moment, the future state phase, when the project starts, plan starts to think about where we're going to get to and the how of it. I'm just wondering, could you give an indication of what you think the sort of typical scale for the kind of project that will be defined in the LEAP might be? And in particular, are you aware of anything on hydrogen as a fuel featuring in the plan at this stage? Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, good questions. On the latter point, hydrogen is regarded, there is going to be quite a lot of detail on hydrogen as a sector and as to where its contribution is most required. It's difficult to talk about specifics because there's still uncertainty at a national level, I think, as to the role that hydrogen should play. That context is something that is going to be taken into account in the plan, and its potential role in the various sectors. In terms of your other question about it was about the scale of the sort of measures that were proposed. I think it's helpful to consider it from two angles. That from Leeds' from the council's angle, we've got it's important that it aligns with the local plan and the revision of that's still underway. There's some really ambitious targets in there around renewables production. So ensuring that we've got that the local area energy plan reflects those targets, and where it's appropriate, matches those to specific projects is important. But obviously, everything has to be subject to the planning process, and nothing's supposed to circumvent that in any way. The point, I suppose, is that it's not certain at this stage, and this is the whole reason for the stakeholder engagement exercise. There's a lot of the interests that are being consulted with. The majority of course, are in the private sector. A lot of large energy users will have their own investment plans and priorities, and they're not necessarily engaged as and fully sort of integrated in our understanding. So the whole purpose of that stakeholder engagement exercise is to get as comprehensive a view as possible as to what is required and what is planned on that sort of granular level from individual energy users, understanding what needs are and what investment may be required to bridge the gap, and ensuring that all that's reflected in the plan. So I hope that answers the question in some way.
Thanks, that's helpful. Can I try one more, Chair?
Yes, of course.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, based on that, good to hear what you're saying about hydrogen. Everything I know about hydrogen as a fuel tends to tell me that it's something that needs to be sort of considered on a large scale. So it's sort of good to know that it's being considered at a West Yorkshire at a higher level. It's probably more appropriate than thinking about it the level of Leeds. Just wondering, bearing in mind what you're saying about private sector entities and their energy plans, do you envisage any difficulties with a sort of a plan of this type of drawing out information, with people being sort of resistant on grounds of the commercial sensitivity of what they're doing and anxious to keep their information confidential? Is that likely to be a problem going forward?
Yeah, that's a very good point. It's one, and you're certainly right to highlight it as a risk. It's one that's been highlighted several times in the steering group and by PwC. Their approach to engagement is to to be as aware as possible of those commercial sensitivities that those energy users will have. And there's you can't guarantee that you'll get necessarily the information that you'll want, but I think not ensuring that you engage with them in a kind of open way, and ensuring that it's cooperative and that commercial sensitivities are going to be respected. That's kind of part of their approach. It is something that PwC are leading, so those direct approaches. It's not something that I or other members in other colleagues in the council are particularly engaged with. That's something that PwC are leading, but our role is to sort of ensure that they've got the contacts that they need and can kind of pursue that engagement in as open and sensitive a way as possible. But yeah, absolutely, it is an issue. So it's one that is being considered carefully.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Stables wants to come back in.
Thank you. I was just following up on that in terms of course, dealing with the private sector is going to be quite challenging in many ways. And I just wonder what teeth the LEAP will have in terms of driving decarbonisation within the private sector. Is there any regulation that's behind this that helps drive this forward?
That's a good question. I'm not entirely sure of the answer. My assumption, though, it's not something that's ever been the idea that we'd be able to coerce or require information from the private sector isn't something that's been discussed. So my assumption has always been that it isn't there. I think the key way to frame it is around investment again, and that the LEAP ultimately, like I hope it will serve essentially as an investment prospectus. So the idea is that you have all the actions required at project level, and that having that and a sort of clear trajectory and a clear sense of purpose and understanding at West Yorkshire level of what's needed to get to decarbonisation, that potentially brings investment. And it's obviously, if they're a private organisation with decarbonisation ambitions and requirements, having cooperating with this and potentially having a route to investment, making that easier, is potentially the incentive there. So I think that's the way to frame it. But not specifically around coercion. I'm not. I don't think this in particular is backed by anything like that.
Thank you. That's interesting. So, yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. Did you want to come in, Polly?
I was just going to say, I suppose there's other policies at play that incentivise people to play ball. So, things around businesses being taxed on emissions. So when we've worked on district heating, it's not been about us having a stick, it's more about selling the benefits of it. And I think that's the same with this, especially some of the more polluting industries are under great pressure to bring down their own emissions. So if we're bringing something to the table where, by sharing that data and it doesn't have to be publicised in terms of individual businesses, you give an overall picture for the city, there's ways of making that attractive. And when we have looked at previous schemes, so linked to hydrogen in the early days, when we were looking at something more local, businesses were quite willing to come forward and talk about what they wanted to do or didn't want to do, on the basis that we didn't then go and say company X is doing this, they've got so many vehicles and this is the mileage under confidentiality agreements. So I think it's just if there's that benefit, but it is more around planning policy, taxation policy, when certain technologies and things get put out off the road, so things like the policy on electric vehicles at small and larger scale, all of that will be the things that drive people to play ball rather than specific policies. I think around the LEP's more just that data gathering exercise, which is really similar to what we've done on district heating. So
thank you. Okay, thank you for that, Polly. Anybody else would like to ask any questions? Okay, so I think we've been all thinking along the same lines today, because as people have asked questions, I've been ticking off the ones that I have. So I think the only one I'm left with is we've had some really interesting presentations, Tom, from anchor organisations across the city and the work that they're doing. So I'm assuming that their decarbonisation plans figure in this as well.
Absolutely, yeah. The stakeholder engagement is designed to be as broad as possible, in ensuring that anyone with a significant stake in this work is represented. So yeah, as part of that exercise, is making sure that they are all represented. So I'll double check, but yeah, they're certainly within the scope of the engagement.
Great, thank you. Okay, so just moving on to recommendations then. I think it's been clear that it will be more useful to revisit this when we have more detail. So you said in your presentation that a draft will be produced for Leeds August time. So I think if people are in agreement, it would be good to come back and visit that when, you know, we have something published that we're able to look in more detail and scrutinise and make some recommendations on. So if people are happy with that, I would be making that recommendation. And then the only other one that I have is that if you know, as soon as you've got something that's useful to share with us, that you're able to share, will you do that? And then we can be, you know, thinking ahead to the next time we discuss this in committee.
Yes, absolutely, Chair. As soon as as soon as I can share something that can be shared more widely, I'm happy to circulate.
Brilliant. Okay, thank you very much. Thank you for your time and thank you for that agenda item. Okay, so let's move on. So we're moving on to the Leeds Future Talent Plans work to support green jobs and skills. And we've got Gillian and Fiona. If you'd like to start by introducing yourselves, please, so everybody knows who you are. And then please go ahead with any presentation or comments you'd like to make to us.
That's fine. Thank you very much, Chair. So for those of you who don't know me, I'm Fiona Bolam and I'm the Interim Chief Officer for Economy and Skills at Leeds City Council. Gillian.
Thanks, Fiona. So, hi everybody, I'm Gillian Wallace. I'm the Head of Employment and Skills at Leeds City Council. I'll just share my screen now, so we've just done a brief presentation with some slides.
That's fine. Thank you very much, Gillian. I'm just going to take you through a couple of quick headline slides before I hand you over to Gillian, who's got all of the detail around some of this. So thank you very much. Gillian, when you get that sort of into presentation mode, if you can put slide 2 on. So just the next slide. So I'll briefly say what the purpose of this is, what our vision is and what we do and how we do it. So in terms of the purpose, we're going to take you through the work of the Employment and Skills team, what we've been contributing towards the development of skills and jobs in industries associated with sectors that are expected to be achieving those net zero ambitions. We'll do you a quick summary of sort of the work streams that have been delivered by the Employment and Skills team, and also how we've worked with our city partners to make sure that we're doing that team leads approach on all of these things. We will also talk to you a bit about the Employment and Skills Service and how they've been working in partnership with the CA to implement the Mayor's Green Jobs Task Force, and talk a little bit about future work streams and priorities. So next slide, please, Gillian. So the vision that we have around this, is to support a healthier, greener and more inclusive economy that works for everyone. And we want to connect people and opportunities, promoting access to jobs and training, etc. If you go on to the next one, this is just a really, really brief overview of what we do in employment and skills. So we work across all ages, and for young people, we help them with experience of work. We have careers events. So for instance, we had the Leeds Apprenticeship Recruitment Fair in the last 2 weeks, where we had almost 13,000 people through the door around there. We also work around apprenticeships. And then for adults, helping to find work, helping to learn and upskill, careers advice, and again, apprenticeships. And for employers, we work with them to help them recruit, help upskill their employees, and invest in future talent as well. If you put the next slide on, Gillian, thank you. So, and how we do it. So we have a mixture of direct delivery, but partnerships underpin everything that we do. We attract funding into the district, often through national government and also through the combined authority. And we will either deliver those services ourselves or we will commission where that is the right route to do that. And that's often into the voluntary and community sector as well. And we influence and support partner delivery, and we've done that through the Future Talent Plan, which I think we've already done a presentation on that previously, and that helps to align the city's skills and talent needs and the education that we provide for people in adults and in young people. Okay, so I'm going to just pause there, and I'm going to hand you over to Gillian, who's going to take you through the rest of the slide deck. Thank you. Thanks, Gillian.
Thanks, Fiona. So Fiona's given a very kind of brief introduction to the Employment and Skills Service and how we work. So why is that relevant to today and the work of the Climate Commission, and therefore why should this update matter to you? As Fiona's already mentioned, Employment and Skills is very much a service that's focused on future talent. And as we work together as a city towards a greener future, we know we need new solutions, technologies and skills development, and ultimately jobs that are associated with sectors which are going to play a major role in helping us achieve our ambitions. Upskilling of workers is necessary to address the skills shortages which are holding these sectors back and ultimately help to grow the workforce so that we can do more. When we talk about green skills, we're talking about key transferable skills, but also the technical skills that people are going to need in order to work in these sectors so that the sector can contribute towards our ambitions. However, one of the things that we've been grappling with for the last couple of years is how we tackle it. As the employment skills infrastructure is not straightforward, we're not the only people in the place. And we've got responsibilities and levers shared at not only a local level, but also a regional and a national level. Meaning the ability to develop the skills in people and the ability to create jobs is not just one organisation's responsibility alone. And how do we tackle and develop skills in jobs that didn't exist 5-10 years ago and jobs that are in the future that we're not even aware of yet. So because of that, the work on green skills and jobs isn't new. And we've been doing activity in this space for a number of years. And as Fiona mentioned, I believe my predecessor has been to this committee before to update on the Future Talent Plan. But I think it's fair to say that the activity hasn't always happened in a strategic context. And instead, we've been reactive and responsive. And it's not that the work hasn't been important, and it's not that it's not been meaningful, but we maybe haven't been able to look at it in the context of economic challenges and looked at how we can drive work forward rather than just being responsive. And this presents an ideal opportunity to do so. We have got challenges going forward. We have got reduced external funding coming into the service. And increasingly, we need to look to rationalise what we do and how we deliver to make sure that we're having the best impact. And this is going to involve working with our future talent partners. And we look to increase the structure around what we do to increase the impact. And it's really that input that we want from the committee today as we can kind of share our future plans as well as look back at what we have done. Move on to the next slide. So I'm going to move on to now some of the activity that we have been doing over the last 12 months and how that's laying the foundations for going forwards. One of the major pieces of work that we've been involved in was around the Mayoral Green Task Force. As you'll know, that was established in 2022 by the Mayor of West Yorkshire, Tracy Brabham. And it was a partnership of businesses, education and training providers, third sector and public sector workers all coming together to try and position the region as a leader in this space, but also sent out some recommendations which would lead to actions so that we can continue to build on things. The Future Talent Board Steering Group was heavily involved in this piece of work and recognised the importance of influencing it very, very early on. So we were able to commit and ensure that Leeds partners had a place at this task force, and were able to feed through our thoughts, our ideas, and ensure that anything that came out of the task force was going to be impactful for us. The major output of the task force, which was published around the end of 2023, was 6 recommendations, and they're detailed on this slide for you at the moment. I'm not going to run through them all. But the bit that was most exciting about it was the list of actions, which was really where we could put our intentions to ensure we had the biggest impact. These actions have been split into actions for individuals, actions for educators, but also actions for business. And over the last 12 months, it's this list that's provided the strategic guidance for what we do as an employment and skills team, but also how our partners who are delivering on the Future Talent paper work together. And this can ensure that Leeds can see the benefit of the actions and align the work of the LA, but also our city partners. I'm just going to touch briefly on how some of that has worked in practice. So one of the major actions which was highlighted was about ensuring that we had free training for adults to meet the demand of green jobs. And working with the combined authority and utilising devolved skills budgets, so funding which has been devolved to us from government that's in our control to influence how it's spent, we were able to develop an adult skills programme to support all people with developing the skills that are in demand. These range from entry-level programmes, which are delivered by the Council's Leeds Education team, through to more skilled programmes where we're utilising our technical training partners, such as the Luminate College Group, independent training groups such as Aim to Learn, the College of Building, and also some of the universities. And this is where the boot camp provision and the real skilled provision, which is led by employers, comes in. We've got a wide range of courses on offer in Leeds now, but we have to be honest and say that adult skills training is not without its challenges. Often the entry-level courses don't provide people with the technical skills that they need to actually transfer into the jobs which exist at the moment, many of which are highly skilled, although they do provide a raft of transferable skills. And when we find that people are in work, they struggle to commit time or employer commitments to skilling into the areas where we do need the skills that are there. Adults have complex lives, and often finding that time and that space in their agenda to hit the requirements of the course can be quite challenging. Even though our adult skills funding is devolved, we still don't have a lot of freedom around how we can allocate it. And this has been a challenge for both individuals looking to access the training courses, employers looking to train their future workforce, but also providers, with much of the funding model based upon outputs and the risk being very heavily on them to fill courses and support people into jobs. Some of might not exist at the right time. We are, however, starting to see a growing success in these courses for people that are self-employed and are looking to upskill or broaden their skill sets and then apply that learning in their business. So linking very strongly with our innovation ambitions. And we are hoping that with single settlement and the growing role of combined authorities, we will see further adult skills education devolution, that's quite a mouthful, which will allow us to have more freedom in the courses that we do put on and how we deliver them so they can better fit our needs. Ultimately, skills training is about supporting people into jobs that are going to help to contribute towards ensuring that we hit all of our objections around net zero. Skills development has linked closely into the adult jobs and has very much driven it. And over the last 10 years, we have benefited from a resource in the employment skills team who's been able to build capacity and the knowledge of employment advisors that are working in the team. They need to understand what jobs are important in this sector and how to support people into them and how to find them. The impact of this so far has been small, but it is increasing. As we're starting to see more green jobs become available and being advertised, we can understand them better and ensure that people have the skills that they need. This is still challenging, however, because much of the jobs that are advertised are highly skilled and much of our work is focused at people that don't necessarily have the skills that they need at the moment or have disadvantages in the labour market. So it's not going to be a quick fix. but it's something that we're committed to and building upon the capacities within our team. The slide on the screen at the moment shows some of the examples of things that we've done at the moment. We've had a partnership programme with the prison where we're using recycling opportunities to give them skills and then work with those prisoners once they leave in order to transfer them into jobs in the Leeds economy. Our lead employment advisor has ensured that we now have 14 highly trained staff that understand green jobs and the skills that are needed, and ultimately where to find those jobs so that they can better advise the people that we support. And we're currently working very closely with the Mayor and the West Yorkshire Combined Authority team on the mayoral graduate scheme, where we are supporting city graduates, particularly those that have a sustainable and environmental background and have graduated in courses, into SMEs, so they can drive innovation and changes in behaviour and ultimately help them look down this route to grow their business. A next area where we've seen great success and we want to build in is around ensuring our young people in the city have access to green skills, careers, information. This will allow them to make choices about their future careers and their educational sector that means they will have the skills in future. In order to do this, we've worked with the careers advisors that are based in schools in the city and ensured that the Starting Leeds website, which is the main portal where careers advisors, young people and their parents and carers go to access advice, has lots of information on green skills, jobs and careers, and this is regularly updated. Additionally, we've ensured that our information aligns with that which is available on the Combined Authority Future Goals website and also with the Consortium of Colleges Go Green website, ensuring that there's no wrong door to this support and that all information aligns, and that they all provide good quality careers information, which also includes the suggestions of job roles now, but also courses that people can access to develop the technical skills. Additionally, over the last year, we've supported Green Careers initiatives, working with both Leeds University and the Business Anchors, which has given us the opportunity to expose graduates to jobs in the sector, which exists now. And I also wanted to highlight the approach of the Luminate College Group, one of our key city partners in this space. Luminate have across the whole of their group, including Leeds City College, have undertaken a big exercise of raising awareness amongst their students. And as part of their climate committee and their future talent plans are achieving this in the ways detailed on the slide. They are ensuring that all young people studying with them are exposed to the ideas and ways to tackle climate change, even if it's not a curriculum area of that which they are following. However, they are at the same time also making great strides in increasing their provision that they have available. They're looking at environmental sustainability of all of their courses and making sure that all curriculum areas have it in their business plan. They've carried out an audit which has identified 96 courses which have a sustainability and net zero content, and are developing new courses in areas such as electric and hybrid vehicles, retrofit construction, air source heat pump installation, and related areas around environmental and climate science. So ensuring that there is a breadth of provision available to people. And finally, linked to this objective, I want to highlight a project which we have been working on with the Combined Authority, which may be of interest to the committee, but also is the direct action of the mayoral task force. We are currently working with the Combined Authority Green Innovation Programme to deliver a pilot school which introduced green careers advice into primary schools. Previously, any activity that we've done in this space has been based at Key Stage 4 students, which is often too late. They've normally made their decisions about which options they're going to study at school, and that can set them down a technical pathway. This programme to go into primary schools to introduce sustainability programmes and designed to inspire students is new and is unique. And we're going to be working with approximately 130 primary schools across West Yorkshire, of which 30% will be in Leeds. The programme is new and it is bringing together educators, volunteers from businesses to inspire, but also parents as well. What we would like to do is bring back some early findings from this programme to a next meeting so that we can track the pathways of our young people and see whether this intervention has benefited them and helped influence their choices in future career pathways, which is the ultimate game. So I'm very aware of time, and I do want to ensure that there is some time for questions and comments at the end of this presentation. So I want to turn very quickly in what the next 12 months of activity will look like for us as we look to rationalise, add strategic context, and ensure that everything that we do delivers impact. We want to work more closely with the Leeds College of Building, and we've already had initial conversations with them about how we can support their development of the Retrofit Academy. This would allow us to deliver more courses in Leeds that can support the retrofit ambitions of the city. Courses such as understanding what domestic retrofit looks like, awards in external wall installation and treatment, so real practical hands-on courses, as well as some senior level 5 qualifications, which is about understanding how we coordinate retrofit across large-scale projects. We also recognise the importance of working with the combined authority on delivering a sustainable transport network in Leeds. This will not only create jobs through construction and development, but will also provide access to up to jobs via clear, clean transport links, and that will increase social mobility. That is a long-term project, but it's one that we're truly invested in and we feel we need to be heavily involved in. We want to continue our focus on green careers advice and support in schools. The industry is changing and the skill set is changing, and that's not going to be a job that's going to ever be done. We need to ensure that our careers information is constantly up to date and constantly reflecting as industry develops. And we want to ensure that all our adult skills pathways are well promoted and understood and accessible to all adults that may not necessarily be looking for these reskilling opportunities, but we know they will benefit from them. Future work also involves working with the combined authority to develop and enhance our technical education pathways. How can we ensure that our post-16 further education pathways align with skills and qualifications that are available at our universities, as well as encourage our young people to make the choices in subjects that will allow them to access them and ultimately support our curriculum development. And ultimately, we want to strengthen our future talent pledges to include activities linked to the development of green skilled and jobs in the city and highlight successes. And if I jump on briefly to what this might look like, and again, this is the Luminate group and the pledge that they have made, is coming up with 3 or 4 key pledges and targets that we can measure and ensure that everybody that's involved with the future skills pathways can commit to this activity and feedback on it, as well as us giving a really good sounding board that we can promote it across the city as best practice. I'll finish there. Really just want to thank you for your time today and then open up the floor to any comments and questions, particularly around our proposals for future work and whether you feel there's anything that there's missing or there's any areas that we need to give more attention to.
Thank you very much. That was not only really interesting, but highlighted some really, really important work. Okay, so open up for questions, particularly with Gillian's comments in mind. Let's go to Councillor Shazad.
Thank you, Chair. A really interesting presentation. I didn't know all this work was actually going ahead. There was quite a bit about adult training and people who are self-employed. I've never really seen that information anywhere. So, I mean, as you put as one of your future things to do is to actually promote it more. So it'd be good if you could probably share with us councils. We could probably actually get this awareness out there and let people know in different settings. So there is that ability for people to actually train in green jobs and to get some qualifications and to actually come along with this agenda that we have got as West Yorkshire, as the combined authority, and also as the local council, because I think a lot of these courses that are on offer would be quite appealing to a lot of people, but they're probably not aware of them. And I'd also like to know what are the cost implications. So for people who are working, would they still be able to go on these courses, or would they have to make a payment?
thank you for the offer, and yes, we'll definitely take you up to that. And one of the objectives of the future talent plan that we've got going forward is how can we create a more accessible portal and website where people can go and see these courses rather than having to look across multiple providers and multiple sites. So once that, before that is developed, we'll share some top line information, but we'll also keep you updated of when that is developed so that it's a nice, easy place for you to direct people to. The answer about cost is unfortunately not as straightforward, and a lot of it is linked through to people's current earnings. There is a minimum level where the courses are free, and then as soon as they tip over into that threshold, they may have to pay. And what they have to pay is very dependent upon the course that they are studying and what the outcomes of that job may be. And it is one of the challenges with adult skills that it's not easy to give an answer to. Do I have to pay? We have to almost undergo quite a detailed analysis with them before we can answer that question. We are hopeful that with further devolution that might come through the single settlement to the combined authority, that's something that we can simplify and we can make technical education more straightforward, not just for young people, but also for adults, because we know that there's a real missed opportunity there and we need to make it simple and affordable for people to upskill, particularly if their employers can't support them. So that's an area that is a little bit of a watch this space on this one, but certainly my team are very committed to, if there is somebody that you are working with that would like us to explore options for them, including the costs, of course, we've got a team of advisors that can help with that, and I'll make sure that we circulate how to get in contact with that team as part of the minutes of this meeting.
Thank you. Did you want to come back, Councillor Shazad?
No, that's fine, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Sorry, I just clicked myself off there. Just to, before I bring Councillor Bromley in, Councillor Stables has just asked if you could put slide 16 back onto the screen, please. I think that's just the previous one.
I shall give it a go. Can you see that one okay? Would you like me to make it larger? No.
Is that okay, Councillor Stables? Yep, we've got a thank you and a thumbs up. Okay, so I will now bring in Councillor Bromley.
Hey, thank you, Gillian, for all of that. It's really interesting, and echoing Councillor Shazad's thoughts, actually, that I wasn't aware that half of these things have started and have been going on. In terms of, you mentioned obstacles that you've come across in terms of accessibility, I'm assuming, and you said the complexity of people that are working full time and time management, and then or ability to be able to fit it in, like family life, etc. And then also towards the groups that we were aiming this towards as well. I wondered, so it's sort of like two parts of the question, really, in terms of the time and flexibility. How is it being? How are they being offered so far? Is it like in terms of evening courses? And are we taking feedback from those people that may have dropped out or inquired but then didn't actually enrol, as to why that might have been? And then secondly, with the skill sets for people that may be missing the basic to begin with, do we then have something in place for that we can then refer people to, so that they can start on that journey, so that potentially in 6-7 years time people are then at a place where they could do something like this?
Absolutely. Yes, so some of the complexity is based around the fact that adults have complex lives sometimes, and just being able to fit in the courses is difficult, particularly if they're not able to do it in their work time. But it also links through to the funding rules that are linked through to the qualifications. So a lot of the qualifications that deliver the technical skills, which is at the point that the market is looking to employ people at the moment, that is at a level of qualification which is called level 3. So that is an equivalent of an A level, for an example, if we were to kind of compare it to school age. To get level 3 technical qualifications, you need some real life experience, and there's almost an element of how do you get that experience until you are in work, and how do you get the job until you're able to give up the time, particularly if you're holding down a full-time job already. That's also compounded by the fact that some of the funding for these courses means that a certain level of learning hours have to be done within a certain period of time. So it creates a very, very pressurised environment. And some of the funding is then also a requirement on people obtaining a job directly after that training, and that's so that the training provider can pull down the funding so that the individual doesn't pay. So it's quite a complex web that sits behind it. So yes, we do monitor why people will fall out of the training courses. We monitor that on a quality aspect. You know, is the training good enough as well? Are we delivering it the right way? Are we delivering it in a manner where we can reach as many people as possible? And we do try wherever possible to deliver hybrid. So there will be some online learning, there will be some guided learning, which is where a tutor is actually with an individual either on the screen or in a room, and there will be some classroom learning as well. But sometimes even making all those requirements just still means it's very, very difficult for adults to hit that requirement. But we keep trying, and we're sure that with increased flexibilities that can come through devolution around the funding rules, we'll be able to constantly improve on that. And with each cohort of learners, we are learning as well. We are learning techniques and different ways that we can do things. By increasing capacity in that system, almost the more courses we do, the more choices we can offer, and that will make it easier for adults so that they have a choice of provision. And if they like working in a certain way, there will be something on offer that will support them with that, and that will come with time, and is one of the reasons why we're committed to increasing the number of courses that are on offer. In regards to giving people the skills in those entry level jobs, it is slightly more tricky in the fact that we do rely heavily upon employers to provide the jobs at an entry level and work with us to train people to get ready. That can be difficult depending upon the economic environment, but we need to find a way to work with employers to come up with incentives that make it easy for them as well. And the only way that we can do that is by engaging with more and more employers. And as this industry grows, we know that we have the workforce there for them. And through with some investment of their time and some investment of our time, they will have a talent pool that will allow their business to grow. Again, it starts small. We need one or two employers that will work with us with this, that we can show the benefits of doing it, and then we will be able to build on that to reach the point where employers feel that they need to be involved, because if they're not, they're missing out on their future talent. There is a role for incentives in this space as well, but we need to ensure that we get those incentives right so that they have the biggest impact. And that's something that we're looking at, particularly with the mayoral graduate scheme at the moment, and what lessons can we learn from that so that we can then amplify it and expand.
Thank you. Did you want
Brilliant,
to come back on that?
No, that was very, very detailed, and yeah, it sounds like you're doing a lot to try and be flexible in any shape or form possible. And yeah, it's a matter of how do we sell the product first to those that can then implement this so that we can do the hands-on thing. Yeah. Okay, thank you very much. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. I've got Councillor Rafiq next.
Thank you, Chair. Gillian just covered some of the stuff I just mentioned, but I think, you know, some of the work areas, such as we mentioned air source heat pumps, retrofit work, and then a lot of the work will, you know, with having more electric vehicles coming on board, the motoring industry will change as well once the combustion engines, you know, slowly fade in the coming years. So I wonder, I mean, Councillor Shazad mentioned about, you know, the comms and all that, and I'm proud of the work your team does, and we're quite lucky to have, you know, I know some authorities with the pressures of financial pressures have done away with some of the work they do, but we still got work job shops in our communities and all the work we do, and a building college in the city, which is we're the only one in the region. And I think we need to kind of grasp the opportunity, and I wonder if it's worth writing to, as well as obviously bringing in fresh talent, but also upskilling existing
people or employers, in particular those who are, because you'll find that a lot of people in the plumbing and motor industry, they're more small family-run small businesses, and maybe writing out or bringing up speed the courses that are available. I'm sure they'll be able to pay, but obviously, given the changes in those industries, how we can actually then inform them, and no doubt, like you said, they are, means tested, some of these courses. So, in terms of the comms work, through social media, through our websites, and then they've got the newsletters and all sorts of things which they get in those different industries, how we can move forward with that. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's going to be an ongoing effort, and it's the effort of all of the partners as well, because not necessarily every employer would look to the local authority for this type of revision. They will contact their local college, or they may contact their local training provider, and that's why it's so important that we work together on this, and that we come together as a future talent board to share intelligence and share gaps and work as partners. We need to ensure that we don't have too much provision in one place and not enough in another, and reach out to all of the suppliers in the supply chain, particularly if we're going to make the most of opportunities such as the mass transit development. And how can we ensure that our local employers have the skills that they need, and are employing people with the skills that they need to benefit from that development opportunity? The College of Building is a really important partner in this space. They deliver some very unique courses, and that we're confident through working with the combined authority we can help them grow with their adult provision, to help them deliver more in this space. Our post-16 provision is incredibly important, and we need to not displace that. This is about doing more, not just kind of moving the goalposts around a little bit.
Thank you. Councillor Stables is next.
Thank you. I was really interested in and love the idea of the pilot scheme that you're doing in primary schools, and I just wondered if you're doing something similar in high schools in terms of bringing parents and people with experience in this sector in to inspire young people in our high schools.
Yeah, so we're not doing it directly as the local authority. However, we're very lucky in Leeds that we have the Ahead Partnership organisation, and one of their work streams is around growing green talent, and that's very much about working in high schools. Initially, we were kind of very involved in the setup and the strategic direction of that, but I have to give them the credit where it's due. They've taken that opportunity and have grown in it themselves, and they use business contributions in order to fund that work. So it is happening. Again, they would like to do more, and with future funding, and we're hopeful that we can identify some of that through this ongoing work streams. We will be able to amplify that. And then we've got the pipeline. We've got the pipeline from the pilot activity into the high schools, into post-16 activity, into technical education at higher levels delivered by our universities, which will ultimately lead to people being in highly skilled jobs, which is what we need to drive this sector forwards.
Thank you. That's very encouraging to hear. And is it across all schools across the area that you're involved?
Only the schools that buy into it, and when I say buy into it, it's not always financial buy-in, sometimes it's time. So we make the opportunity available to all schools, and we ensure that all schools that have a careers advisor and are involved in our careers network are aware of that opportunity. But we can't force them all to make the most of this, but we are able to map it, and we do if we know that somebody hasn't taken us up on one of these offers, we can contact them and be a little bit more proactive in waving it in front of them, if you like.
What proportion of schools do you think that you're involved in?
I'll have to come back to you on that one. I couldn't say off the top of my head with any real knowledge, but what we can do is get you an update report of which schools we're involved in, where they are, and those that are missing.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else want to come in on this item? Okay, so just looking at the questions I had, and again, quite a few of them have come up. One of the things I was wanting to ask was the new courses that Luminate are offering are really exciting, but they're kind of only as good as the careers advice that's there for the young people to be aware of them. So are you regularly updating the careers advisors to make sure that they're aware of these new opportunities?
Yeah, absolutely. And what we do is we work very well with the Luminate group, and then they will open up their doors and invite careers advisors in to their provision as well, so they can actually see the provision in action, ask questions of the tutors that are actually delivering the courses, and wherever possible, encourage them to take some pupils along, particularly in that age 14, age 15 stage, so that they can see it themselves, as well as us just hosting the information up on the Starting Leeds website. We work very closely with the Leeds City College careers advisors that they've got in position, and we're always looking for new ways to keep them upskilling and keep them updated and keep it relevant.
Oh, that's really good to hear, because there's no substitute, is there, for a visit, so taking some young people to see what's on offer rather than directing them to a website is hugely more powerful. Okay, thank you. And then I had a question about linking with opportunities that we have ourselves within the council in terms of green jobs and skills. Is there anything that we need to improve on there?
We are, we're very linked in with our people services and ensure that they're aware of the work that we are doing, including some of our adult skills training courses. Actually, just this week, I was speaking to our HR department around some of the skills bootcamp courses, and potentially do we have people working from us that could benefit for some of this retraining. Unfortunately, I don't know too much about their kind of longer term plans, but I can assure you that they are actively involved in the future talent plans, and we see ourselves as a major employer, and part of what our role is to prepare people for jobs for major employers in the city, and we as a council, as an employer, are no different from that approach.
And also it's an excellent opportunity to showcase that, isn't it, to other employers in terms of, look, this is what you could achieve by engaging, and this is how beneficial it's been to us.
Absolutely.
Okay, so I think that's everything I had on my list. So if we just move on to the things I've scribbled down in terms of recommendations. So from Councillor Shazab's question, it would be really good if you can share information after the meeting about the adult programmes. That seemed particularly something that people were less aware of, and we're always really keen to promote opportunities through things that we create and share and do. So that would be one good thing that we would appreciate. You also said that you would be okay to share contact details for advisors, so that if we meet somebody who could benefit from the adult services on offer, that we can signpost them in the right direction. You also said you would update outside the meeting on which schools are involved in the pilot scheme, and also that when it's further down the line and you've got some information to report, can come back to a committee meeting, because I think we'd be really interested to see progress and what we can learn from that pilot. I think that is it. So thank you very much.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Gillian. Thank you, Fiona. Thanks for sharing that and for all the work you're doing. Really appreciate that. So thank you. Okay, so we are skipping backwards because I wanted Rachel to give us an update on the workshop work that's gone on and that will be going on. And apologies, Rachel, it's certainly last but not least, but I just thought it would, seeing as we started late, give people an opportunity to leave if they needed to. So over to you.
That's fine, Chair. I won't be too long myself, but just to so I know a few of you on the call were at the last workshop that we had, so it focused more about disinformation and managing that in terms of in relation to climate messaging. So it was a really it was a really good discussion that we had following the presentation. We talked about a few of the key things that we mentioned throughout that. We looked into obviously how we can actually make sure that that positive and factual messaging is reaching all parts of the communities. Looking at ways in which we can actually share the likes of the climate newsletter that we send out, look at how we can obviously use existing measures such as the name escapes me a minute, hang on. I'm going up my list here, of course. The Leeds by Example, of course, because Dan mentioned it earlier. The Leeds by Example page that we have as well, how we can sort of repurpose that to make sure the messaging on there is up to date and very clear and concise. And we just had a really nice discussion thinking, rather than it be all the council's work about the messaging, how we could actually incorporate different companies who are experienced in using different measures such as electric vehicles, any recipients of any community climate grants, and we could invite those to share their communications as well. So we're showing how people in existing roles are using different methods in addressing the climate change. And then we sort of looking ahead, we were then talking about linking into the work that Dan mentioned. We then talked about the Leeds Climate Commission Education Working Group, which quite nicely then ties on, because the next workshop, which you'll have all received an invitation now to, is Thursday 20th of March, 11 till 1. And the subject matter for that is primarily looking at climate's role within education. So not to repeat too much on what was mentioned earlier in the meeting, but recently the Leeds Climate Commission had a really good discussion, and we're shortly due to meet again to talk about obviously actions that can be taken, how we can develop that sort of climate curriculum and agenda within each aspect of education. So we're hoping that during that particular workshop we'll be able to have representatives from different primary schools, secondary schools, and any other people associated with the education sector who will be able to share their thoughts and be there for any recommendations as well. So obviously if you are available to attend, then that's the next one coming up very soon.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Rachel. And I absolutely agree. I think it was a really, really productive discussion, and we left with lots of actions, which is always good. So yeah, it'd be great to see as many of you as possible at the next one. Any questions or comments on workshops? Okay, thank you very much, Rachel. So that just leaves us to the date and the time of the next meeting, which is an in-person meeting. I'm going to repeat that. It is an in-person meeting at Civic on Monday, the 24th of March at 2 o'clock. So look forward to seeing you all there. And thank you for bearing with the technical hitches, which all came all right in the end. And thank you to everybody who contributed. Really interesting discussions, lots of things to take away. And thank you to everybody behind the scenes that makes SEAC work. Not always smoothly, but work. So thank you very much. Thank you, everybody. Enjoy the rest of your afternoon.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you.
Cheers. Bye, everybody.
Bye.